It's been a while since we've had our friend Amber Athey on with us. She's the Washington editor over at The Spectator, and she's always a good conversation. So let's bring her in because there's a lot to talk about, Amber. Good to see you. Thanks for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
Let's start with Tucker Carlson. Listen, it's weird because it's Fox News and we're Salem News Channel, and I try not to talk about other outlets, but you can't escape this story. It's a huge story, and I know you've been focusing on the so-called harassment suit from one of his booking producers, and it's getting a lot of coverage on MSNBC and CNN and the broadcast networks and New York Times. But boy, they're leaving a lot out of how they cover it. Most specifically, as you wrote earlier, she's never even met the guy. She's never actually been in the same room with Tucker Carlson.
Exactly. And a key portion of her lawsuit makes this argument that Tucker was somehow directing or encouraging this hostile and sexist workplace when he films his show out of Florida and Maine and has never actually been to the Manhattan office while Abby Grossberg was working for him. So it's a little bit difficult, I think, to determine that someone who is hundreds of miles away from you is somehow telling his sexist minions, I think his lawyers referred to them as, that they were supposed to bully Abby Grossberg. And then another piece of my reporting found that she was contemporaneously telling people that she actually loved working for Tucker, that she admired him, and she was really enjoying her time on the show compared to her previous jobs in media, which she also thought were hostile. I think at a certain point, you have to consider if every show that you're working on is supposedly a hostile work environment, what is the common denominator there?
Yeah, I think that's a great point. But boy, it hasn't stopped places like MSNBC and CNN from celebrating this woman, that she's some sort of iconic clarion voice in the wilderness, calling out the obvious sexism and fascism and all the other isms they love to throw at Tucker Carlson. Is any of it sticking, though?
I don't think so. And I think that it's pretty reductive for these places to suggest that either the Dominion or the Abby Grossberg lawsuit were the catalyst for Tucker's exit from Fox. The evidence just suggests otherwise. There are other
Mhm.
hosts, for example, who were named in the Dominion lawsuit who still have jobs at the network. And the Grossberg lawsuit is absurd on its face. I mean, one of the examples of sexism that she cites is the idea that there were these photos of Nancy Pelosi on her Italian vacation wearing a low-cut bathing suit, and her fellow colleagues basically were making fun of the photo. And I remember when that photo dropped, and that was a thing on social media where everybody was cracking jokes about it.
Everybody, I can tell you, I work with a lot of different women on my staff, and they all pushed it at me. They all sent it to me. In fact, you may have been one of them, Amber, if I remember
Probably.
right. So it is intriguing, though, as everybody's speculating what's going on and why did Tucker really get fired? Because it was so out of the blue, and he was making the most money for that network, and he had the biggest ratings for that network. And yet we still don't have any sort of real explanation. And now we've got these videos leaking out of, behind the scenes moments with Tucker. And what's interesting to me is that most of the people who consider themselves fans of Tucker Carlson, these videos, seeing a glimpse of how he interacts with his staff when the camera isn't rolling, or at least the camera isn't broadcasting, I should say. Clearly it was rolling. They make him look even better. He's so relatable. He's like, yeah, I want to hang out with this guy.
It reminds me of when there were some leaked tapes about Melania Trump where she was complaining about the media's coverage of her Christmas decorations, and the left thought it was going to make her look bad. And the right watched the or listened to the clips and thought, wow, Melania is just like us. She's even cooler than we thought. That was the reaction that most people had to these Tucker Carlson tapes. And by the way, if this is the kind of thing that Abby Grossberg was supposedly offended by, him cracking jokes with his staff, then it makes the lawsuit seem even more moot. And, according to several people that I talked to who have worked on or around the show, it was pretty clear immediately that Abby Grossberg was not a good cultural fit. And the left will often say, well, a good cultural fit, that just means that she didn't go along with the sexism. But no, as you know, Larry, there's a culture that exists in newsrooms and in media companies where
Yeah.
you have to be allowed to joke with each other because you work together all day long. You're stuck in this box together and you get to know each other really, really well. And so it's not uncommon for people to poke at each other and jab each other because you end up becoming basically like family.
Yes. By the way, now's a good time to reveal to the world. Amber, I'm not revealing that Amber, used to work together on a radio show until the company I work for, Cumulus, lost their mind and fired her for a hilarious tweet. But that's a whole other story. But during the time we worked together, oftentimes various people on the staff would say something, and Amber would say, "Oh, that's going in the book. That's going in the book." you don't
Exactly, yeah.
you don't really have a book, do you, Amber?
Well, I can't say because I like to keep people on their toes, but
Man,
I
I mean,
just know
kind of,
that I have a direct line to Media Matters, Larry, so watch
yeah.
out.
Oh, don't we all? Let's turn to some of the other topics that you've been working on, most specifically about critical race therapy right now in therapy sessions. This is, everybody thinks that psychologists and therapists, they're scientists and everything. Not necessarily. And that profession has been completely overtaken by woke left wing agenda over the last several decades. And now even critical race theory.
That's right. Therapy is very much a social science. And unfortunately, I was leaked a series of messages from a Facebook group of licensed mental health professionals. And some of the things that they discuss in this group are very disturbing. They talk about this idea of pushing racism and bigotry into their sessions with white clients and basically blaming their inherent biases for the problems that they're experiencing. And they also talk about with their clients of color, encouraging them to participate in activism. One of the messages, for example, talks about how it's not enough to just give them coping mechanisms to deal with marginalization in society, but they also have to get them to participate in activism to, quote, dismantle the systems that are causing their oppression. So there's
Wow.
clearly an effort on behalf of therapists, and particularly progressive ones, to inculcate critical race theory and ideas of systemic oppression into the sessions that they're having with clients, even if their clients didn't come in specifically for help with those issues.
Right. Right. So in other words, they'll come in there and they have some other problem that they're trying to get some therapy for, which is a good thing. I believe in therapy. I think it can be really beneficial for people if they need it. And then the psychologist's response is, well, the real problem is you're inherently racist, or the real problem is you're a victim of systemic
Right.
racism. I think we have enough mentally unstable people out there protesting in the streets right now. I don't think we need to be encouraging more.
Exactly. There was one example that was given in the messages about, I think it was a white woman who had come in to talk about issues she had in her marriage and perhaps with her church. And the therapist's response was that these issues were rooted in the white supremacy inherent in those institutions. It's just really nutty stuff. And you
Yeah.
have to feel bad for the patients in this scenario because they're basically being denied their agency to define what their problems are and why these things are happening to them, and being brainwashed by a therapist who's supposed to have their best interests at heart into thinking that they are basically battling some unseen force of systemic racism that they can never conquer.
This is borderline malpractice, though. If you truly do have some, your borderline depression or some various issues that you really could benefit with some therapy and psychoanalysis, you're walking in there, you're not actually getting what you need, could be harming you even further. Where are the grown-ups in the room? There's got to be some professional psychologists who don't want to see their profession hijacked by activists.
There definitely are some, and unfortunately, those people end up getting attacked by their colleagues in these Facebook groups. Sometimes they're threatened with being reported to the licensing board. They become basically enemy number one. And you're exactly right that this type of approach to therapy can very much hurt clients. There are studies that show that individuals who take responsibility for their life and for their problems have much better mental health outcomes than individuals who view what's happening to them or what they're going through as the result of society working against them, of some insurmountable force. It leads to higher rates of depression and other mental health issues because if you're not in control of your own life, you end up feeling hopeless.
Something tells me that it's going to be revealed years from now that, back in 2021, a young out of work chorus boy went to his therapist and said, I'm really, having trouble. I'm depressed. I'm sad. And the therapist said, well, Dylan Mulvaney, I've got a solution for you. But we'll get to that another time. Amber Athey, always good to talk with you. And hi, everyone at Media Matters. There's more to come on O'Connor Tonight.